I want you this morning to imagine that you're St. Peter. Okay, so we are all St. Peter here in this gospel story. And in fact, I want to give you the events that happened before the Transfiguration in the Gospel of Mark. Again, we are imagining that we are St. Peter. Okay. The first event that I want to share with you that happens before this event is Jesus making the deaf hear and the mute speak. Okay. He gives someone the ability to speak and the ability to hear. So you as St. Peter now are witnessing that happening. Then the next story that happens right after that is when Jesus is talking to a vast multitude of people. He wants to feed them, but there's no food to feed them. There's only 7 loaves and 2 fishes. So again, you as St. Peter are trying to figure out how we're going to satisfy the Lord's request in feeding these people. Jesus takes those 7 loaves and 2 fishes. He says a prayer over them. He gives them to you. And then you participate in the miracle by having that endless supply of the loaves and fishes. So Jesus makes the deaf hear, multiplies the loaves and the fishes. And then the next thing that happens is that Jesus tells you, again, you're St. Peter, he tells you to beware of the yeast of the Pharisees and scribes. You know, yeast, the thing that we use for the bread to rise. Again, just happens right after the multiplication of the loaves. And now Jesus is saying, beware of the yeast of the Pharisees. And you have no idea what he's talking about. And then Jesus looks at you and says, do you not yet understand? Well, no, we don't understand yet. We don't understand yet. Then, Jesus gives sight to the blind. The deaf hear, multiplication of the loaves and fishes. Do you yet not understand the symbols? Sight to the blind. And then, he asks you a question. Who do you say that I am? And you, along with St. Peter, you are the Messiah. You're the Messiah. Jesus affirms your response. And then, the last event before this passage, Jesus is walking along, and he tells you this. You're St. Peter. You've been with him now for a very long time. You shared a lot of good moments with him. He's given you a sense of purpose and direction in life. You were a fisherman. Not like there's anything wrong with that. But there's a new spark to your life now as he speaks, as he teaches in a way that no one has ever taught before. Your heart is alive. And he tells you this, that he must be handed over, he must suffer, be crucified, and on 3 days he must rise again. You're St. Peter. How do you feel about that? I think most of you, if not all of you, including myself, would do the exact same thing St. Peter does. He stops Jesus in his tracks, he gets in front of him, and he begins to rebuke him. Far be it, Lord, that I should ever let that happen to you. Because he's your friend, your teacher. He's the one that you looked up to. He's the one that is promising all the promises of the Old Testament, everything that you and your ancestors have waited for. He has promised it. He has given it. He's going to give it. He's done it with, again, giving sight to the blind, multiplication of loaves and fishes. All these things are happening that are affirming your belief. And now he's going to tell you that not only just that he dies, but that be crucified. Hanging on a tree. That in the Old Testament, to hang on a tree was considered to be cursed by God. And so I think all of us, along with St. Peter, are only natural to say, no, we're not going to let that happen to you, Lord. And then he looks us in the eyes, us with the best intentions of love and care, and he says, get behind me, Satan, because you think not as God does, but as man does. Get behind me, Satan. I don't know about you, but that would cut me to the core, right? Be called that. But see, with the mute gaining speech, the deaf hearing, the sight being blind, what Mark is telling us in the story is that Peter, the disciples, and I think us, are at times spiritually deaf and spiritually blind. That's why Jesus says, do you not yet understand? No, we don't understand yet. Because the thing that Peter is definitely blind to is that of the purpose and meaning of suffering. Just like I think we are. We avoid it, and when we're in it, we're upset. And when we're in it, we get angry at God, and we get angry at others. And maybe some of us fall into despair. Maybe some of us throw a pity party for ourselves. All these things, we're spiritually blind to the important component of the mission of Jesus Christ, is that he has to also offer his body. His body is the only thing that can take away the sins of the world. Not the body of a lamb or calves, not a grain offering, but only the body of Jesus. A body which, in now today's gospel reading, right after Jesus rebukes Peter, he takes us by the hand and leads us up to a constant place of God's divine revelation that is a mountain. A mountain's always a place where God becomes present. Throughout the whole Old Testament into the New Present day, they go up to the mountain. They're now going to encounter God, but instead of clouds and glory, now the appearance of Jesus changes. Now that divinity that is hidden inside humanity, the divinity is shown forth. So forth that even the clothes are a dazzling white light. It is a uncreated light, a light that we have never experienced, a light that has always existed from the very beginning, being magnified. And again, us and Peter, when we see something like that, when we see a divine revelation happen, Peter's response is probably also our response. What are we filled with? We're filled with fear, because we've never experienced anything like this. This is most definitely out of the ordinary. And so much so, I think like us, like Peter, that when we're in that state of fear, we just start mumbling things. He calls him rabbi. Okay, I don't think that's really the appropriate response to a guy who has the divine light shining from him. It's more than just rabbi. And it's most definitely more than the phrase, it is good that we are here. You know, that phrase doesn't do it justice, but Peter is just speaking out of fear. And so now our Lord is revealing the glory of his divinity that is within us to give Peter, but also in the year 2024, as we hear this gospel passage, to us. That in our sufferings, God allows it, but the glory of God will be magnified through it. And I don't know that except through faith. And I don't know that except maybe through experiences in my life. And maybe you know that now when you look back on the trials and tribulations of your life, maybe you can see where God was working in that, maybe not. Maybe that hasn't yet been revealed or known to you yet. And maybe it won't be known to you until the day you see our Lord face to face. Not every suffering has an answer. I know that too. But we have to remember of God's constant presence, glory, that he enters into suffering so that he can be our companion through our own sufferings in life. He's inviting us to deal with the tribulations of life with patience, perseverance, and even courage and faith. We all go through it. We can't avoid it. It's going to happen to all of us. We do the best we can to avoid it, right? We spend a lot of years and time and money in our lives trying to avoid the discomforts of life. But it's going to happen. It's going to happen. But when it happens, go to the transfiguration. Go to the moment where Peter was trying to prevent our Lord from suffering, and then our Lord just takes him up to the mountain to tell Peter and to tell us, it will be hard, it will be difficult, it will be scary, but it will also be okay. God will lead through the suffering. He will build our faith and lead us to his divine glory. That's why he's here. He's here not just to die, but to show us the fullness of life and to show that even in suffering and in death, God's life, his glory, and his life will continue on. May God bless you.